I'd like to call the meeting to order. I feel like I'm going to make a great speech here today, but I'm going to defer that to George Gillum, George Costa, one of the lawyers, and Mr. Edmonds. This is our 20th anniversary meeting, and it's nice to know after 20 years we'll get a new boardroom. Very nice, so Bobby, very nice. Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Hyde.
Here.
Mr. Harrell. Here. Mr. Carter. Mr. Dick. Present. Mr. Edmonds. Here. Mr. Gillum. Here. Mrs. Haley. Here. Mr. Costello. Here. Mr. Lambert. Here. Mrs. Poston. Here. Mrs. Quander. Here. Mrs. Schick. Here. Dr. Stevenson. Here. Mrs. Williams. Here. Mr. Williams. Here. I have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. The Chair will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
So moved.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. We have a request to deviate from the agenda for a short moment. I'd like to recognize Mr. George Gillum at this time.
Mr. Chairman, as a very humble graduate of the University of Virginia, I would like to recognize, in light of the events of last Saturday in Charlottesville, our most distinguished graduate of the College of William and Mary, Mr. Harrell, our esteemed Vice Chairman. I would like to move as a binding resolution that Mr. Harrell be given 30 seconds to say whatever gloating, obnoxious things he wants to say. And then that we don't have to listen to another damn word the whole year. And I'll put that as a motion.
You've heard the motion. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Mr. Harrell, you have 30 seconds.
The only thing that I'll say is our actions speak louder than our words.
Mr. Williams.
Mr. Gillum's introductory speech is so it might be appropriate for the board to add anything as much to be humble about.
Second.
It's a wise man who knows his talents.
The humility becomes.
It does. Let's move on to our committee reports. The first report will be from Audit Committee, Mrs. Schick.
The audit committee met this morning. There were no action items. There were a few information items. Following the report to the Audit Committee, the Auditor of Public Accounts for Thomas Nelson, internal audit reports for New River, Rappahannock, and Virginia Highlands. And then there were two special reports. One for Thomas Nelson, there was a special regional request survey, and the summary of the investigation updated final status for the Mount Empire situation that began in February of '85. If there will be no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 12:07.
Are there any questions of the Audit Committee? We'll move to item B, the Budget and Finance Committee report. Senator Edmonds.
Mr. Chairman, the Budget and Finance Committee met this morning, and the only action item we had to consider was the annual financial statements, which are the blue-bound book in front of you. I'm sure all of you had a chance to go through them fairly thoroughly. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to refer them to Kittrell or someone else who could probably answer them. In any event, we have a formal function here, which is to ask that these financial statements be sent on to the appropriate state authorities, unless you have any questions about them.
Is that your motion?
I so move.
Second. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Motion carries.
The second item, information items. The first information item is that we are now going to have an audit of the VCCS as a single institution. This audit will be available to us by June 30th, 1987. It comes about principally because of the federal requirements that any entity receiving more than $100,000 a year has to have an audit available every year to the United States government. And most of our institutions receive more than that amount of money. The The movement, however, toward a single audit, or the audit of the VCCS as a single agency, is something that has been brought about. The impetus in that direction has emanated from this board. The local budget and finance committee a couple of years ago began to move in that direction, or suggested we move in that direction, and so we're seeing a cycle, the end of a cycle, so to speak, and the fruition of some of our planning, and I think it might be interesting for the board to note that. The single audit has advantages and disadvantages. One of the greatest advantages is going to be that instead of having several different audit teams in different parts of the state with different interpretations and different requirements, we're going to have a single set of requirements for this audit. Now, this ought to lend a little more uniformity to the audit procedure. If there are any questions about that, I'd be glad to try to answer them. Question, George? Okay. Second thing is the equipment trust fund. As you all know, the bonds have been sold for the equipment trust fund, and our needs, as indicated, are in three different categories. The first category is with regards to depreciable equipment. These general equipment needs run on the order of $30 million, and this is equipment that has been depreciated under the IRS guidelines, the descriptive guidelines for equipment. Our needs in the area of academic computers run on the order of $8 million, and in the engineering section, we have about $5.8 million in needs. As I understand it, we will probably be dividing about $3.9 million that we will receive from this trust fund in those three different categories. $1.8 million toward the general needs, $1 million toward the computer needs, and $1.1 million toward the engineering needs. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think that's approximately what the distribution is going to be. As the years pass, we will continue to get more out of this trust fund, and we'll continue to replace the equipment that needs to be replaced, and we're looking forward to receiving these funds during this fiscal year, perhaps April or May of 1987, as I understand it. Any questions about the trust fund? And the last item is the board expenses, and those are in your supplemental notebook, which indicate that we have spent today $11,304.19 in board expenses, and our unexpended budget forwarded to November is on the order of $33,675.81. So you can see that we are spending at a rate that is generally within the limitations of the budget that we set for this year for the board.
Thank you, Senator Edmonds. It's always very clear when a politician is on TV because he gives long reports, and we are being filmed here today. Let's move to the...
Jim, did you want to mention that 5880 expenditure is going to be removed from this?
No, that's true. There is an item in the board budget, 5880, that really should be in a different category. Joy Graham's travel expenses should not be charged to the board and come in a different category. That will be removed next month.
Any other questions for Senator Edmonds? We'll move to item C, the Curriculum Committee report. Mrs. Doreen Williams.
The committee met this morning, and first order of business was the approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Only one action item on the agenda, and it's in your agenda book, and it has to do with the adoption of or approval of a diploma program at J. Sarge Reynolds for interpreting services for the hearing impaired. As is noted on here, it's quite similar to another program in another community college, but it doesn't cost anything to have something that is almost the same, but not the same. And so the committee recommends approval of this diploma program. Are there any questions on this issue?
You've heard the motion. Is there a second? Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion's carried.
The rest of the committee time was given over to information items and discussion of various things. And there are several programs that have been discontinued, and as you know, the board doesn't vote on those, we just sort of look at them. One of them is the Computer Operations Certificate Program at Central Virginia, and I believe that another board member has a question about that.
Yes, that gave me some concern, and I wondered why that was happening. I was under the impression that they were very fast-growing programs, and the company is seeking much, and I wondered what the problem was.
As I understand it, and staff can expand on this if I misstated or say it not sufficiently, a number of these certificate programs, particularly in something like computer operations, are under-enrolled simply because they have reached the point of not being enough. The expertise that you acquire in a certificate program is not adequate. It's gone beyond that. And you will notice this, that it's been incorporated into the data processing major, so that it may be there was lack of enrollment, but that lack of enrollment may be because the students were finding that or the employers were finding that it was not adequate to the expertise level they wanted. Is that correctly stated? In other words, this might be a good thing. It doesn't mean that there isn't a big emphasis on computer, because there may or may not be down there, but it simply means that the students may need more in-depth training than can be given under this certificate program. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. Is that okay, Ms. Conner? Okay. Are there any other questions on the other discontinuances that are in your book? If not, we did talk and discuss at some length. If you look in your book to the articulation agreements section, there is an indication that there are discussions that are happening, and I think they're very exciting discussions that are happening down around the Virginia Highlands Community College area with some of the other colleges. And I would, if you, having read this, have any questions or any concerns about it, I would be glad to try to answer them. I think that I would hope that the board would agree that just let them keep talking and see what can come out of what looks like a pretty exciting program. Are there any other questions on that? Just one more item that we took up. Well, we took up several others, but for now, I had been at a conference several weeks ago, and it was the Southeast U.S. States Japan Trade Conference. And listening to this, there is at least one of the colleges in our system that is doing a fantastic program in reaching out to the Japanese community, and many of these are top management type people in all kinds of ways, not just language help, but also intercultural assimilation, that sort of thing. And I would be fairly sure, if you all remember, was it 2 years ago that we met up in Northern Virginia and we had the film on what the community college was doing in the Lynchburg area, that more and more you're going to find pockets of foreign-speaking nationals here on trade business. And so we agreed that we would ask that the staff do a sort of an inventory of what any of the community colleges might be doing to reach out to these groups, people coming in. For instance, there's an industry going to come into Harrisonburg that will employ about 50 people or so. And will have Japanese top management along with it. To see, the inventory would be to see what community colleges are doing what and what their capabilities are for reaching out to this kind of a community in a different sense than just the sort of straight ESL, English as a Second Language program. So that will be forthcoming in time. And that concluded our business.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. We move to item D, the Facilities Committee from Mrs. Anita Phillips.
Mr. Chairman, at your suggestion, as long as my usual practice, I'll take the first three matters together with one motion at the conclusion of those. The first matter is the Blue Ridge Community College. Staff and the local board has asked us to reject the bids for the construction of tennis courts there. There was only one bid, and it came in part of the budget, so they asked that we reject that bid. The second item is parking lot at the downtown campus at J. Sargent Reynolds Community College. The staff and the college board is asking that we reject that bid, and the committee concurs. This parking lot was to be constructed on, maybe these parking lots were to be constructed on land that was coming from surplus property from the Department of Highways and Transportation. Unfortunately, that land is no longer available to us because the city of Richmond is building their visitor center on it, and we're not able to use that for parking lot. So we're recommending that we reject that bid. Let's see, did I get all three of these? And in Northern Virginia, the Manassas campus, the Army National Guard has asked us for authority to use the campus in Manassas in emergency situations. This has been done before at another campus, and we are agreeing with the recommendation of the local board there that we grant the Army National Guard the authority to use that campus facility for emergency purposes. There's a letter in the booklet that explains what sort of things they might be doing, such as tents and possibly using restroom facilities, generally not in excess of 72 hours. We have recommended approval of that. So I would offer a motion in support of those three items at this point.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve items A, B, and C. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. A, B, D.
The next matter is a request that we, as the facilities committee, be given authority to act with the full board in connection with three matters that are coming up for bid very shortly. One is at North Virginia Alexandria campus. We've asked for authority to make recommendations on bids for a parking lot project at the Alexandria campus. The second is at Tidewater Community College Frederick campus to make recommendations on bids for the college services building. And third, the Tidewater Community College Virginia Beach campus Learning Resource Center expansion project to make recommendations as to the bids on that project. We can shortcut the time by possibly a month and get these projects underway a lot faster if we do not have to wait until the January meeting of the full board. And we ask your indulgence with the Facilities Committee again and a grant of authority for the Facilities Committee to act in the interim on these three projects. So I would offer a motion on that as well.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Justice, you'll have to help us on that. Do you have the dollar amount on these projects? It's significant, I'm sure, because the two Tidewater campus projects are both very significant projects. One is an entire building, one is an expansion of Learning Resource Center. You approved the plans for these projects before.
Mr. Costello, you know Mr. Day is here in person somewhere. Do you have any comments on this item? We have a motion. Good. Good point, Mr. Lambert. Is there any other discussion on this motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no.
We have several information items that I'd like to cover now, and then there are several matters that we'd like to take up in executive session. We'll defer, as I understand, Mr. Chairman, to the end of the agenda.
correct.
The information items. First is the Facilities Committee has continued its tour. We went to several of the western campuses, Whitfield, Virginia, Western, Patrick Henry, and Danville on October 13th and 14th. Courtesy of Mr. Carter and his airplane again, we were able to make our trip in 2 days. It might have taken quite a long time had we not had that availability. Again, we were joined by folks from the legislative staffs, and again, we were very impressed by what we saw. The report sets it forth in detail, and you can read it at your leisure. But we want the whole board to join us, and particularly we're interested in taking our tour to Tidewater, and I'd like for you to schedule a meeting in the springtime in the Tidewater area. We've got several projects going on in Tidewater Community College, etc., as we'll discuss later. And we would like to invite the full board to join us as we continue our tour of the community college campuses. There's a brief status report on the pedestrian bridge problem at the Woodbridge campus in Northern Virginia. You'll recall that there was a problem with that bridge, one of the beams being undressed. We awarded a contract for repair of that project. The contract is approximately $27,000, and we'll be talking in executive session some more about some further details about that situation. We're postponing to executive session information on the quality camp situation and on the Piedmont Virginia situation. For your information, there's some data sheets on 2 leases which Rappahannock Community College has entered into with the Middle Peninsula Planning District Commission and with Mary Washington College. These don't come within our authority to approve, but are there for your information. The college is cooperating with these other institutions and agencies and feels that much good is coming out of having individuals come onto the college campus. There's a status report in your book on the situation with Caswell Hall at Southwest Virginia. Our structural engineer and consultant, Hanover Engineers, has made another inspection of the premises, this time after some of the facade has been removed. He feels much more comfortable with the situation and will be giving us a report shortly. And it's believed that the repair of that facility may be less costly than we thought before. You'll see in your booklets a letter from Jeff to the VCCS president. We have asked that the staff assemble for us information with respect to all of the auxiliary enterprises. As we toured the campuses, we've learned that each of the colleges probably legitimately has a different way of handling food service, parking, bookstore, and we thought that it would be very valuable information to get that information assembled so that we can analyze it, find out if we're doing the right thing, the wrong thing. Maybe we can circulate it among the system and some of the colleges can learn by others' experience. That would conclude my report for the time being.
Thank you, Ms. Poston. We'll move to item E, the Personnel Committee report by Mr. George Gillum.
Mr. Chairman, the Personnel Committee worked long and hard over its action item. I particularly want to thank Lawyer Lambert and Mr. Williams for their dedicated and diligent service to this committee. We need to ask the board for authority to hold a special meeting on November 18th in Richmond to certify the candidates for the Danville Community College presidency. Because of the interview schedule, were we to hold that up for a regular meeting of the full board, we would delay the process some 6 or 8 weeks.
I so move.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion carried, Mr. Gillum.
That concludes our report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Gill. We'll move to the Chancellor's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to introduce the president of Germanna Community College. You all are aware of Dr. Turner's appointment because you participated in it. Just to refresh your memory, Francis S. Turnage is a graduate of Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, and University of Virginia. He's been at Blue Ridge was at Blue Ridge for some 19 years. He was a professor there. He was an assistant to the dean. When he was a professor, he was an English professor, assistant to the dean, and he was dean of instruction for 6 years. As of November 1, just recently, he became president of Germanna Community College, replacing Marshall Smith, who had moved to the assistant's office. I want to introduce Frank to you. While his name is Francis, he's called Frank. Dr. Turnage, you may have a moment to speak to the board if you choose.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chancellor, Mr. Board. It's indeed a pleasure for me to appear before you at the official received by you. I'm very challenged to have this opportunity to continue to serve the Virginia Community College system and college. I want to say that I'm extremely fortunate in following Dr. Marshall Smith at Atlanta. And that would be right there. There's only one call. Dr. Smith is there to come back to follow. But I'm very excited to be at Atlanta. It's a very good situation here. And I look forward to continuing to serve this system, which I'm convinced is the finest college system in the United States of America. Thank you so much.
Frank, I'm particularly pleased that you are on board because that means Marshall cannot go home. So he has some nostalgic days, I sense. I'm pleased the door is closed to him, he can't return. Mr. Chairman, if you prefer, I'll move on into the enrollments, and this will be a very brief report because, as you know well, I've not tried to overplay enrollments in the 3 years I've been here, and I don't want to begin now. And the simple fact of enrollments up still does not change that position a great deal, although I'm pleased they're up. Just to give you some information more current than what you had, as of October the 17th, I'll give you 3 or 4 figures. If you want to jot them down, you might look at them later. The head count was up 6,056, which totals the highest head count ever in the VCCS. Now, the head count will mean faces, that number of people, unduplicated head count. The FTEs, which are the more basic way of counting, a fall versus fall, a fall of 86 versus the fall of 85, that was an increase of 3,116 FTEs, or a 6% increase. Another figure that may interest you some, we're projecting the annual FTEs for this year versus last year as being up some 3,500, which is a rather remarkable increase. And I'll say more about that to the causes tomorrow when I have a few minutes to speak to everyone, but obviously the good marketing program and the reduction in tuition, and maybe some other factors played into this, but it's a good situation to be in when you're growing and that you serve more people, and a bad situation when you're declining and that you serve less people. And those are the 2 hallmarks of the changes as I see them. Therefore, and a couple of you have asked me, and Mr. Chairman, now's a good time to maybe clear the air. You've asked why I don't have charts and graphs at the board meetings showing FTE fluctuations. I don't, because I don't want you to get hung up on numbers, except in the numbers that we serve. And so therefore I haven't had it and will not unless you insist that I do so, and I hope you won't. Because I don't think FTEs are as important as we might make them sometimes, except as it reflects in the number of people we serve. Mr. Chairman, I'll answer any questions that anyone might have on it. But these figures are current as of October 17th. They will change slightly, but Dr. Russell indicates the slight change will be slightly upward as we pick up these odds and ends of the quarter.
Mr. Chairman. Could you give us the parameters of the individual institutions without naming? Just increase to
The top increase was 20.7%. That's annualized versus annualized, or annualized projection versus actual annualized. There was one college slightly below even at 0.7%, minus 0.7%.
Thank you, sir.
That's annual versus annual. If you'd like fall versus fall, I'll be pleased to give you that. The top was 18.4%, and had one college that had a decrease of 4.4% fall versus fall. Mr. Chairman, I have it broken down by colleges if anyone would like to see it. You want to move on to the next time?
Yeah, please.
Board, if you remember, 3 years ago, I talked to you about placing in each of the institutions a person who would work directly with business and industry, where the responsibility of that person would be that responsibility solely, feeling that it would bring our colleges more in line with what the state needed at this particular moment, and that was our efforts in economic development. However, that was at the same time we were trying to retain 525 positions because of declining enrollments, and the item pretty much went by the boards, except that in a couple of instances, well, maybe more than a couple really, the college presidents decided the idea was a pretty good idea and went on and did it anyway. And it's worked out very well in those locations. But strangely enough, the good ideas, which I think that one was, comes back. The Center for Innovative Technology, CIT, has been willing to assist us with this endeavor to some degree. The Secretary of Education is very interested in it at the moment. The proposal, and on your agenda you see technology transfer agent. The proposal is that in 3 to 5 of our colleges, in cooperation between CIT and the Secretary's office, we would be provided with a technology transfer agent, which is a person that I described 3 years ago who would work with business and industry with one ad. That this person would also broker the needs of business and industry with four-year colleges and universities in that area. For example, if a very sophisticated industry had a need far beyond what we could do, and this person could become aware of the need, he would move the need to the place it could be responded to. If it was research, it would go to VPI or George Mason or UVA or wherever it needed to be. If it was training, of course, it would be with the community colleges. We've talked about locations, although we haven't come down to a final decision. But obviously, we will go geographic. Obviously, we'll try to pick places where there is good diversity of industry. And obviously, it will add to the burdens of the presidents and others in the colleges where this person goes. These will be supernumerary positions that will not count in our allotment, will be provided by CIT and the Secretary of Education's office, and would be paid for by a combination of monies from them. I think it's a great opportunity for us because I thought it was a good idea then, and I still think it's a great idea. And I'm real pleased that Ron Carrier and Don Finley are in support of the idea. So I can't give you more than that on locations because obviously Dr. Carrier and Dr. Finley are going to have some input into where they are, and obviously we are too. But hopefully by our next meeting, I could say to you we have 5 locations or 3 or 7, whatever it may be, and they are in the following places. But I think this is a very positive move for us, Mr. Chairman of the Board, and I'm very pleased. I have a promise that if it works well, therefore If it works well, it will spread to 23 colleges. Therefore, we want to be sure it works well. Therefore, we will be very careful about the placements with the hope of giving them as much chance of success as possible. But that's a very positive report on that, Mr. Chairman. I'm very pleased with it. And that's here's my report.
Thank you, Dr. Hockaday. In the chairman's report, in the back of your agenda book, there are 2 resolutions concerning the passing of 2 former board members, Mr. Walker and Mr. Mears, and I have a motion. Is there a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The motion is carried. Item C under the chairman's report concerns the San Diego meeting of the ACCT, in which I'm proud to report that Mr. Harrell was elected delegate, a delegate to the ACCT, the first time Virginia's had a delegate. We're very proud of you, Bobby, and Dottie did a good job for you out there, evidently. Took some of that Virginia political machinery out there to San Diego.
He says that Dottie's a better campaign manager than Senator is.
Well, trying twice.
Well, I would like to call upon Mrs. Schick and Mr. Harrell to give us a little brief report on the good times out there. Ms. Schick, we'll start with you.
I will just say that we not only got Bobby elected, we got me as the alternate on the nominating committee.
Very good.
Under mine up, as far as that's concerned. I would say that it's a good convention. There are many things that the give and take and what you can learn just being associated with people from different parts of the country. Very, very important. The association and what they accomplish as far as national legislation is concerned is perhaps our most important thing. I do believe that we gain quite a bit out of our association with people who will refer to Harold.
Mr. Delegate?
Director.
Director.
I would like to, to thank this board and the people in Virginia for the support and allowing me to run for this. I think it's a real honor, not only for me, I think, but for the state, because we've only been involved in ACCT for 3 years. And to be able to gain the insight, I think, and have the other people interested in having someone from our system. Another important factor that I think is that I am the only member of the national board who represents a state board that's totally community college oriented. We do have a young lady from Nevada who is on the board. That Nevada system, the university system, and the community college have one board. So she has dual interest. But hopefully from a state board perspective in dealing with national legislation and policy that it allows us some input. As Dottie mentioned, the key things that ACCT does that affects us is dealing with the federal government and national legislation. And the thing that I have been impressed with over the years has been the impact in formulating legislation versus having to react to legislation. I think that's the number one key as far as the organization and that focus. And the second part, which Dottie touched on, that I think has hopefully made those of us who've had a chance to participate better board members, is the interaction and trustee training that's involved through ACCT and the exchange of ideas with other people, other parts of the country. I called Jeff the morning I got back and said, I want you to know one thing, that my reaffirmation of faith that we in Virginia have the best community college system in the nation. And every time I go to one of these meetings and interchange and listen to the problems of other states that we seem pretty much to have under control, it reaffirms that faith in our Virginia system, and I thank you mainly for the opportunity to participate. And we do have on our program tomorrow the National Legislative Chairman for the Association of Community College Trustees and Association of Community College and Junior College, who will give us a complete legislative update on the national agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Our meeting on January 14th will be a joint meeting with Chev. You will be receiving the paperwork on that meeting. It's still being put together at this point. If you receive that information later on. At this time, I'd like to refer back to the Facilities Committee and go into executive session to discuss their business.
want those presidents involved to stay.
You want the president to stay?
You want the president?
Yeah. How many, is it proper for his board chairman too?
And his board. How do we-
His board, he's got 2 board members here.
His chair lady.
Yeah.
Dr. McCall, your board chair should stay also.
He has another board member too.
And another, if you have other board members, they should stay.
Ms. Poston, you have your motion?
In accordance with section 2.1-344, Wren A, Wren 2 of the Code of Virginia as revised, I move that the state board convene in executive session to discuss the Bldg Community College Suffolk site, and in accordance with that same section, Wren A, Wren 6, to discuss the bid bond forfeiture to Piedmont Virginia Community College and assign area Northern Virginia Community College.
Heard the motion, the second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. Fourth in executive session. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I knew you were directing that. That's all right. I had to sit there thinking, and
I was delegate, became director. I really,
that's super better.
you know, if you look at what we get on the colleges from Pell Grants, Mike McCall, president of Bldg Camp, Joyce Wilson, chairman of his board, and Tim Johnson, a member of his board. And Mike would like to make a presentation to us on the information that you have in your supplemental booklet dealing with the offer of donation of land to Bldg Camp for the Suffolk Center. I'll defer to Dr. McCall and help him in any way possible.
Years afternoon, I have been before you to discuss things that we have been doing in Suffolk. And a lot has happened in the last few years concerning where we can get in our office with our facilities. We do have a concern, of course, that our lease does expire very shortly in June of next year. We're in the process of renegotiating a lease and soliciting legal proposals as well. Whatever we do, we're going to have to be available in June of next year. We have, in the material that you have before you, been offered some land for construction of the facility. I'd like to show you in particular what it is. It's probably best if you want to lay it forward and see it.
Tim.
Mr. Chairman, this is an executive session, why is it going to take?
Is that tape?
Will we turn it on?
Never done that.
That's what Nixon said. It was tape.
You want to turn it on?
Yeah, I think you're right.
Unplug the tapes. Unplug the tapes. Yeah.
Refer to Mrs. Poston.
There are 10 acres of land to Bldg, to the community college system for a Suffolk campus for Bldg Camp Community College. I would move that the state board endorse acceptance of that gift of land, subject to further definition as to the precise parcel of property and subject to all final approvals and appropriations.
You've heard the motion and the second. Is any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, no.
Mr. Secretary, I'd like to show that I abstained on that, since it's in my locality.
Mr. Harrell abstained. Ms. Poston?
Yes, I'd like to make another motion, and that would be that we defer award of the contract for architectural services for the new building at Patrick Henry Community College, pending further action by the executive committee.
You've heard the motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The motion's carried. Thank you, Ms. Poston. Is there any other business to be brought before the board?
Chairman, at our Finance Committee meeting this morning, we discussed the fact that there is ongoing an analysis of the method of distribution of funds within the system. There's a study going on. We believe that that would be a very good topic of one of our informal meetings prior to the board meeting, because we think that the board members may not be aware, as they should be, of how funds are distributed within the system.
Mr. Chairman, we have the literacy topic with Chev in January. We could have this for March.
Suitable, Ms. Sunday? Let's do that.
Sure. Same thing. I'd like to put a review of the policy personnel manual on there for sometime later in the spring.
Mr. Chairman, as long as we're loading up the agenda way yonder, I would like to, depending on what happens with this inventory on what colleges are doing with the international groups of one kind or another, I think an exchange of information on what is being done would be very helpful and hopefully very interesting.
I agree, Ms. Williams. You had that good list, Joe? Is he in it?
You could do as many as two at one time.
You might also consider a brief presentation on the process by which a building becomes a building. I think Bob Harold's given a speech on that before. It might be helpful to do a concise presentation.
When a building becomes a building, can you put the name on it?
The approval process, the accreditation process.
The 37 checkoffs you have to go through.
Anyone else have any business? Board meeting is adjourned. Yeah, I got to remember that now. Who did this? Right there, man.
And influence people with it. It made me so upset.
You're going to